This story is based on real-life events. Names and certain elements have been fictionalized, but the core events remain true. Viewer discretion is advised. This case is extremely disturbing. Lena Morgan got back home late that night, just before midnight. She had spent the weekend in Phoenix for a business conference. Before she left the airport, she posted a short video. In the clip, she looked tired, but in good spirits. She was still wearing her work badge and mentioned how much she missed her daughters and how ready she was to be back home. Her friend Kim Watson had picked her up and given her a ride. Kim dropped her off at around 1:45 in the morning. The neighborhood was quiet when they arrived. Lena rolled her suitcase up the driveway while Kim waved and drove off. The porch light was on, and from the outside, everything about the house seemed normal. The next morning, Kim sent her a text just to check in. She asked how Lena had slept and whether her daughters were happy to see her. She didn't get a reply. About an hour later, she sent another message asking Lena to give her a call. Still, there was no response. By 10:30 a.m., Kim started to worry. She decided to drive back over to Lena's house. When she got there, the garage door was closed, but Lena's white Lexus was parked inside. Kim knocked on the door and waited, then knocked again. No one answered. She called Lena's phone, and although it rang, it eventually went to voicemail. That's when she called Jason Harper, Lena's husband. Jason sounded calm on the phone. He told Kim that Lena had probably taken the kids and gone to a friend's place, maybe just to get some space. He said he hadn't seen her since early that morning, but he wasn't concerned. Kim, on the other hand, wasn't reassured. She told him she was going to contact the police. She kept pacing outside the house, growing more anxious. When she called 911, her voice was shaking as she told the dispatcher, My friend Lena, she just got back from a business trip last night, and now I can't reach her. Her car's in the garage, her phone's off, and she's 15 weeks pregnant. This isn't like her. Not long after that, a suburban police officer arrived to do a welfare check. Jason showed up shortly after. He was wearing gym shorts and a baseball cap and appeared relaxed. He told the officer that Lena had gotten home late the night before, that they had talked briefly, and then she went to bed. When he woke up in the morning, she and the kids were gone. The officer asked if they could look around the house. Jason paused for a moment, but then said yes. The front door opened straight into the living room. Everything looked tidy. The couch cushions were arranged neatly and the kitchen was clean. Lena's purse was on the counter, and her wallet, driver's license, and phone were all inside it. Her keys were still sitting in the small bowl by the door. In the kitchen, they noticed prenatal vitamins beside a glass of water, which proved to them she was indeed pregnant. There were no obvious signs that anything was wrong, but something didn't feel right. Her shoes were still near the door. The kids' backpacks were hanging in the hallway. There weren't any signs that they had packed to go somewhere. No bags, no diapers, no leftover snacks. Jason stayed close by while the officers looked through the house. He kept his hands in his pockets and kept saying things like, "She probably just needed to get away for a bit." The officer didn't argue, but he noted that Jason kept trying to explain the situation even though no one had asked him to. Later in the day, one of the neighbors came forward. He had a security camera pointed toward part of Jason and Lena's driveway and offered to show the footage to the police. The officers watched the video from earlier that morning. At 5:17 a.m., the garage door opened. Jason's truck backed out into the driveway, which the neighbors said wasn't normal for him. He usually drove forward out of the garage and didn't take much time. But this time, Jason spent over 45 minutes moving things into the truck bed. The video wasn't very sharp because of the camera's position, but it was clear that Jason kept going between the garage and the driver's side of the truck. He appeared to be carrying heavy items. At one point, he stopped, bent down, and dragged something into the back seat of the truck. Jason was standing behind the officers as they watched the footage. His expression started to shift. He began blinking quickly. His lips tightened. His jaw moved slightly, like it was tensing. One of the officers turned toward him and asked, "What were you doing at 5:30 in the morning, Jason?" Jason cleared his throat and said, "Just getting my tools. I had an early job at the site." Then the neighbor stepped outside with one of the other officers. That officer leaned in and quietly said to his partner, "That man just watched himself load something into his truck, and lied about it. Word about Lena Morgan's disappearance spread quickly. At first, it was just the local news, but it wasn't long before national outlets picked it up. The headlines focused on the fact that she was pregnant and missing, along with her 2 daughters. 2 days after she went missing, her husband, Jason Harper, was already giving a public statement. He stood on the porch in the sunlight, looking into the cameras, asking for Lena to come home. His voice cracked at the right times. He said, "Lena, if you're out there, just bring the girls back. We love you. We miss you." But the public didn't buy it. People who saw the video online started pointing out details. They said his eyes didn't look like someone who had been crying, and he didn't seem truly upset. They noticed that he kept shifting around and looked uncomfortable in a way that didn't feel natural. At one moment, just after saying he wanted them back, a camera caught him giving a very quick smile. It only lasted a second, but people saw it. At the same time, the police had already begun digging deeper. They started talking to people who were close to Lena, and it quickly became clear that things at home hadn't been as good as they might have looked. Lena's closest friend, Kim, told investigators that Lena had been struggling in her relationship with Jason for quite a while. In one of her texts, Lena said, "He shuts down. Like he's not even here anymore. I think he hates me. I don't know why." She also spoke with her sister, Lauren, and told her that Jason had stopped showing her any affection. She said that even when she reminded him she was pregnant with his baby, he barely looked at her. When Lena found out she was having a boy, she texted Jason a picture of the sonogram. He didn't reply until 6 hours later, and all he said was, "Cool." The police decided to go back to the house and search again. There were still no signs of forced entry, and everything looked mostly in order. But they did notice that the sheets were missing from the main bedroom. When they asked Jason about that, he said he had washed them the day before. But when they checked the washer and dryer, both were empty. There was a pile of folded laundry in the laundry room, but Lena's pajamas weren't in it. Her phone, purse, and keys were still inside the house. Her phone ended up helping the investigation. It connected to the home Wi-Fi at 1:46 a.m. the night she came home from her trip. After that, there was no other activity. Jason's phone, on the other hand, had some things that stood out. Around 3 a.m., he sent a message to a coworker saying he'd be at work early that day. That was strange because he usually didn't leave the house until about 6:30. Investigators checked the cell tower data and saw that his phone stayed in the area all night, right up until 5:30 a.m. That matched what the neighbor's security camera had shown, Jason leaving in his truck at that time. The police brought him back in for more questions. He sat across from a detective with his arms crossed and kept repeating the same things. He said he didn't know where Lena had gone. He kept saying maybe she left him or needed some time alone. They gave him a polygraph test, which is standard in cases like this, even though it's not always definitive. When they asked, "Did you physically harm your wife?" and he answered no, the test showed he lied. When they asked, "Do you know where Lena is right now?" and he said no again. The results showed he wasn't being honest. After the test, the examiner left the room. Jason sat alone for 14 minutes. At first, he didn't say anything. Then he started whispering quietly to himself. Everything he said was recorded on the camera. One thing he said stood out. Why did she have to do that? When the detective came back, they didn't waste time. They told him directly, "We know Lena didn't leave on her own, and we know the girls didn't walk out with her, so tell us what happened, Jason." Jason looked down at his hands, which were clasped together. His jaw started to move, but he didn't speak right away. After almost 2 full minutes, he finally took a long breath. Then he said, "She hurt them. She killed the girls. I came home, saw what she did, and I lost it." The room went quiet. He continued. He said, "She smothered them. I don't know why. Maybe she was upset. I saw them on the bed, and I snapped." It was a confession, but it didn't clear everything up. The detectives didn't believe Lena would ever do something like that. She had never shown any signs of being overwhelmed or angry. The messages she sent the night she went missing had been completely normal. She had written about giving the girls a bath, ordering pizza, and playing hide and seek. Still, Jason stuck to his story. He wouldn't admit to anything that suggested he had planned it ahead of time. Then one of the detectives leaned in and asked him, "Where are their bodies, Jason?" Jason didn't answer right away. His lips parted slightly, and then he spoke in a low voice, I'll take you. Jason was stiffly sitting in the front passenger seat of an unmarked police vehicle. His hands were loosely cuffed in front of him. It was early in the morning, and the sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows over the dirt road. They were driving through open land in Weld County. No one said anything during the ride. Not Jason, not the detectives in the car with him. Eventually, they pulled up to a remote oil site that belonged to the company Jason worked for. After a long stretch of silence, he finally spoke. His voice was flat as he pointed toward an area near some large oil tanks and said, "Over there." The officers walked over and started scanning the ground. The spot Jason had pointed to stood out right away. The ground wasn't flat like the rest of the area. It looked like it had been disturbed recently. It was slightly raised. One of the detectives began digging while another carefully recorded each step. Not far down, the dirt loosened, and they uncovered a piece of a bedsheet. They found Lena's body buried in a shallow grave. She had been wrapped in her own bedsheets. There were bruises on her face, and her neck showed signs of pressure. There weren't any injuries on her hands or arms, no marks to show that she had tried to fight back. She still had her watch on her wrist, but her wedding ring was missing. A short distance away, the officers turned to two large metal oil tanks. They climbed up the stairs, and as they got closer, they were hit with a strong, unnatural smell. When they opened the hatch, they found the bodies of the two girls inside. They were floating in thick, dark oil. Each child had been forced through an opening that was only 8 inches wide. This was a difficult thing to do physically, which made it clear that effort and intention were involved. The girls were still wearing their pajamas, which were soaked and stained with oil. Their arms were crossed in ways that didn't seem natural. The rest of the day was spent recovering the bodies. They had to drain the tanks slowly to avoid damaging any evidence. Firefighters helped with the process, and the coroners waited nearby while each of the girls was carefully removed. At one point, Lena's father arrived at the site. When he saw the grave, he had to be restrained. Through clenched teeth, he said, "He put my grandchildren in oil." Jason was arrested there at the scene and taken straight to the Weld County Jail. He didn't resist. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't say a word. During booking, the officers took his fingerprints, photographed him, and wrote down everything he had on him. One of the deputies noticed that his shirt still had a strong smell of gasoline. While watching the intake on a monitor, another officer said quietly to a colleague, "I've processed violent guys before, but this one's ice." At the same time, a team went back to Jason's house to search it again, this time knowing more about what had happened. In the kitchen trash, they found a bedsheet with stains that matched the one used to wrap Lena's body. In the garage, they found a bottle of strong cleaner and some used rags. These had been hidden in a bag behind a tool cabinet. They also went through Jason's phone and were able to retrieve some deleted messages. In one of them, he had sent a message to Rachel, a coworker he was in a relationship with. He told her, "I just need to get through this week." They also checked his internet history and found searches like, "How to dispose of a body," "Can police find deleted texts," "How deep is an oil tank," and "New apartments for single dads." He had even looked at an article titled "How to Start Over After a Breakup with Kids Involved." When the investigators contacted Rachel, she was shocked. She told them Jason had said he was going through a divorce. He had never told her about having children, and he definitely hadn't mentioned a pregnant wife. She said they met at work. At first, they were just friends, but it turned into more dinners, staying over. He told her he was sleeping in the basement while his wife figured things out. What hurt her most was how recent everything was. Just 4 days before the murders, Jason had sent her flowers. That same day, Lena had posted online that she had felt the baby's first kicks. When detectives asked Rachel if they could see her phone, she didn't hesitate. She handed it over right away. She was upset and angry. She said, "He used me. He used all of us." That night, while in jail, Jason asked for a pen and some paper. He wrote a 6-page letter. He didn't begin it with a greeting, and he didn't sign his name at the end. At the top of the first page, he wrote one sentence. "You want the full story? Here it is." In the letter, he confessed to everything, not just the actions, but also the reasons behind what he did. The letter Jason wrote got to the lead detective's desk early in the morning. The envelope was bent and had smudged fingerprints on it. Inside were 6 handwritten pages. The writing didn't look the same throughout. Some parts were rushed, while others looked more carefully written. He didn't start with a greeting or show any sign of being sorry. The first line simply said, "You want the full story? Here it is." In those pages, Jason gave a step-by-step explanation of what had happened. He said Lena had come home from her business trip and seemed tired. They hardly spoke that night. She went to bed by midnight and fell asleep. Jason said he stayed up for almost an hour in the dark, thinking, before deciding what to do. He wrote that he got into bed and put his hands around Lena's neck while she was still asleep. She moved a little and struggled for a few seconds, but then she stopped. He said he stayed there watching her for about a minute, making sure she was gone. It was quiet the whole time. He only heard himself breathing. After that, he went to his daughter's room. He strangled the older one first using a blanket. She woke up while it was happening and kicked, but she didn't make a sound. He said it didn't take long. The younger one woke up during that. She sat up and asked, "Is the same thing going to happen to me?" He claimed she didn't look scared, just confused. Then he smothered her too, and said it took more time. Jason admitted that he wrapped Lena's body in a bedsheet from their bedroom and dragged her downstairs. He carried each child one at a time and placed them in the back seat of his truck. Lena was laid in the cargo area, covered with a blue contractor's tarp. The girls were seated next to each other, still wearing their pajamas. He then drove to the oil site. It was a 45-minute drive. According to him, the girls were completely silent the whole time. He said he thought the older one might still have been barely alive, but he wasn't sure. "She didn't say anything," he wrote. "Just sat there. I didn't look at her." Once they got there, he used tools from his truck to dig a shallow grave for Lena. Then he climbed up the stairs of each oil tank and pushed the girls' bodies through the small 8-inch wide openings at the top. He didn't give a reason for choosing the tanks. All he said was, "I didn't want anyone to find them." The investigators who read the letter were disturbed. Nothing in the letter suggested this was an act of sudden rage. Jason openly said that he had been thinking about killing his family for several days. They found a note saved in the Notes app on his phone. It was titled Life Plan and included sell house, file divorce, move in with Rachel, start over, clean slate. In the letter, he referred to Lena and the children as obstacles. He said he felt trapped in a life he didn't want anymore. He described the pregnancy as the final pressure point. When the detectives asked Jason about the letter, he didn't deny any of it. He said, "It's all true. I just wanted it done." People reacted quickly when the news got out. The story was picked up by news stations across the country. They replayed clips of Jason from earlier, when he had stood on his porch asking for Lena to come home. Viewers were stunned. Some called him a calculated monster. Others commented on how emotionless his confession was. A vigil was held in Lena's memory. Hundreds of people showed up. Her friends read aloud from a personal journal that police had found in her nightstand. The journal showed she had been trying to fix the marriage. In one entry, she wrote, "Jason hasn't touched me in weeks. He won't talk. He stares at his phone. I don't know who he is anymore. I'm trying. I just wish he would try too." Another entry, written just a few days before she died, said, "I think he wants to leave me, but I don't think he will, because of the kids, because of the house, or maybe he's already gone and I'm just the last one to notice." At the same time, Rachel, the coworker Jason had been seeing, went into hiding after people online started targeting her. Through her lawyer, she released a short statement. It said, "I had no idea Jason was married. I am devastated and heartbroken. I am cooperating fully with law enforcement." In Weld County, the district attorney held a press conference. He said the charges against Jason were being raised. Jason was now facing 4 counts of first-degree murder, including for the unborn baby. Other charges included unlawful termination of pregnancy, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. The district attorney said, "We believe these murders were deliberate, cold-blooded, and premeditated. We will be seeking the death penalty." But before anything could go to trial, Jason made a surprising decision. He told his lawyers he wanted to take a plea. His legal team announced that Jason would plead guilty, not to avoid prison, but to avoid something else entirely. According to them, Jason said he wanted to spare his own family and Lena's family from the pain of going through a long, high-profile trial. The courtroom was packed on the day he entered his plea. Reporters filled the seats, and Lena's parents sat in the front row. Their faces didn't show any emotion. When Jason came in, he was wearing shackles and a beige jail uniform. He looked thinner than before. He didn't speak or make eye contact with anyone as he walked to his place. The judge went over each charge individually. First-degree murder of Lena Morgan, first-degree murder of both of her daughters, first-degree murder of her unborn child, tampering with a body, unlawful termination of a pregnancy. Each time, Jason gave the same response, using a flat voice with no feeling: guilty. The judge scheduled the sentencing hearing for the following week. When that day arrived, Lena's family gave their victim impact statements. Her father went first. He carried a small framed photo of Lena holding one of her daughters. As he read his statement, he stared directly at Jason. He said, "You took away my daughter, my grandchildren, and my future, all in one night. And then you lied. You smiled on camera. You told the world you were worried about them. I watched you hug my wife and tell her you had no idea where they were. You knew." Lena's mother was too emotional to read from the paper she brought. She placed it on the podium and simply said, "You are a coward. You are not a man. And I hope you never see sunlight again." Jason didn't respond in any way. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't cry or speak. When the judge gave the sentence, 5 life sentences to be served consecutively without the possibility of parole, Jason remained still. The courtroom was completely quiet. Nobody moved. There wasn't even the sound of writing. The judge stated clearly for the record that the crime had been calculated, cruel, and devoid of humanity. Jason was taken into custody right away. Because of the publicity surrounding the case and concerns about his safety in the regular prison system, authorities arranged to move him to a high-security prison in a different state. They didn't share the location with the public. Rachel, the woman Jason had been involved with, disappeared after the sentencing. She had made one short public statement and then she stopped showing up anywhere. Her social media was deleted and her apartment was cleared out. Some people think she left the state. Others believe she changed her name. No one knows for certain. The case didn't end in court. It was widely covered by national media. News programs ran stories that looked into why some people commit crimes against their own families. Mental health professionals talked about warning signs Jason had shown. Things like being emotionally flat, showing narcissistic traits, and lying on purpose. Some discussions focused on emotional abuse and controlling behavior within families that appeared normal on the surface. Lena's friends started a nonprofit in her name called the Lena Morgan Foundation. The organization's goal is to prevent domestic violence early, especially when it shows up as financial control or emotional manipulation. Those were issues that had been part of Lena's relationship but weren't recognized in time. On what would have been Lena's 36th birthday, people came together for a candlelight vigil. Her best friend, Kim, spoke to the crowd. She said she didn't die because of a moment of rage. She died because someone close to her made a choice, a series of choices, to lie, to manipulate, and finally to kill. He didn't snap, he planned it, and he smiled through every single lie. That evening, no one brought up Jason's name. Everyone focused on remembering Lena.